Winds Meet just got an absolutely massive developer update. We'll look at everything there, including a developer roadmap for December. We'll use some additional context there from the CN client, since they already have most of these things in the December roadmap, which will also tie into a CN client update that will eventually come to the global client. That isn't all, we'll also check out some end of December updates not included in the roadmap, which yes do have a ton of Christmas theming, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World? Utopia here, back with another video. Today we're checking out all things Where Winds Meet. Okay, so first up here, we're gonna go over the December roadmap, and as I mentioned, most of the stuff has already been in the CN client, so we can provide additional context there. So for week 1, we do have the 2 Jianghu Legacies. We have the 12 Years of Feuds, that one has already started, as well as the Unholy Prophecy. Those have both been going on now. Essentially what these are lore-driven stories. They're not tied to the main campaign, but they are side quests here. So those have been going on. We kind of covered some of those recently, at least some of those additional campaigns that launched alongside the main campaign. For week 2, there is a ton of stuff going on here. The first massive one here is the global mobile launch. So yes, CN does already have the mobile launch, but we are getting that global now on December 11th. Now, cool enough, a Reddit user actually did start a thread here saying, is the mobile version of Where Winds Meet actually good, or just kind of a side mode here? They asked a ton of questions for the Chinese players, basically asking what's going on over there and how that version does work. A lot of users have shared their insight, but I found one very insightful one here, where the first one, it is essentially the same game, just with poorer graphics, of course. They do mention there is a substantial user base over there in the CN client, so it actually will make up a large chunk of players. They do mention here, though, that most players, or most people, will play on PC for the main quests and hard boss fights, where a lot of people do play on mobile for clearing daily missions and just casual exploring. Basically, you should have no problem doing normal raids or clearing camps, assuming your phone can actually run the game. Potentially maybe having a controller tied to that. They also mention it really does depend on your phone, but it is generally a poorer experience than on PC. Just imagine navigating the UI on a much smaller screen, even if you have no lag or performance issues. They said they would compare it to Wuthering Waves PC versus mobile experience. They do mention that cloud gaming is quite huge in China. NetEase even has its own dedicated cloud service over there, kind of similar to how Genshin is overseas. That's so people with lower spec phones can actually use it. What they do say is that GeForce Now doesn't really work well with Where Winds Meet, and that same does apply to other games. So pretty cool. There are some insights from the CN player base and how the mobile platform will work. Of course, that wasn't all for week 2, that's just the major side of things. The next one here is the Roaring Sands Zone. Now, this is actually a new region that's on the roadmap, so they kind of discussed that there's going to be new regions and bosses. This is the new region that we're going to be getting for December. Now, because the CN release already has this region, we could go over a few details with it already, where basically the Kaifeng map does fully unlock here. And now that we'll have that kind of tied secondary section of it, taking up around 1/3 of the Kaifeng region. We can see some teaser imagery for this side of the region here, where we even do have some of these inside sections here. These scenes look really, really nice. And we do have some of the outside landscape underneath a bridge. Now, also because interactive maps are a thing, they do have a version over in CN. So I had pulled that version up here so we could check out what Kaifeng does look like with this top 1/3 half here that we are at least missing, with some of the inside inlets as well. So pretty cool there. If you want to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description. We also have 2 things tied to this zone that's on the roadmap here again, which is the campaign Rivermaster and the boss Feng Ruzhi. Now, cool enough here, we can refer back to the article here that actually does showcase a full kind of outlay of what this boss does look like. So we can see a bit of the teaser imageries here for it, which are very cool overall. On top of that, though, there is still 2 additional things for the 11th that ties in 2 limited time activities. The first one is the Fortune Beyond Parlor and the Great Faceologist. Now, for the Fortune Beyond Parlor, it doesn't essentially match up with the CN name quite literally. They have done more so of English variation here, where they've essentially not translated it, but given it English labels. So given context there, it's actually pronounced Guansai Feng over there in China, or that translates to over there official wealth parlor or wealth house. And it essentially is a card mini-game, as you can see here from some of the footage and teaser imagery, that it is a card mini-game tied with other social activities. Of course, there was that other secondary event here, which is the Great Faceologist, which again, over there in China, more than likely is translated to this, which is Yi Rong. And over there, given that context, is essentially the disguise face-changing system. It's a key feature where you can disguise yourself to look alike as others. You can then take commissions and play out other social scenarios. Things like confessions, breakups, and even infiltration. So a ton of cool minigame and social features tied with that. Seems like a fairly cool event here. That brings us over to week 2.5, where we get the Velvet Shade sect unlocked, which of course is tied to the full faction system there, and is another entry and a joinable organization. That will lead us on to week 3 and 4, where we first up have another sword trial called Scarlet Shock, where that's going to be a sleeping Daoist. We also have Harrow's Realm unlocked, which is the blazing Gale Dance, essentially going to be twin lions. And then last up to round up the roadmap here is the Fireworks Festival, which of course ties into the Global New Year. Now that does round out the roadmap, however, we do have some additional events here that look like they're going to be tied into this. Now I can't find any confirmations that these will for sure come to the global client, as these are CN only articles, but I would safe to assume so. And there is this article here that says heavy snow is coming soon, where it does showcase kind of their version of a snowman. They also have an event here where you can turn into a giant snowball, where it will engulf anyone that it does encounter. You can also turn yourself into one of these snowmen and attack people with it as well. And there are various of other different attack patterns that you can do so here. They do mention, however, these attacks or techniques can only be used to punish the wicked, but also to frolic around and play with other wanderers. Again, I really do hope this event comes to the global client. I assume it will, because it just makes sense to. And it isn't on either roadmap there. In fact, they did release a CN version of a roadmap, or our roadmap. It wasn't on theirs either, so I assume that it will just be kind of in place there. They do mention that even after the event ends, though, you can still obtain these special skills by completing quests. So if you wanted to utilize these, you can do so. They do also mention, following that update, there's going to be a new stronghold called Flying Ruins. They also get a new heroic trial and heavenly crafting caves, but more than likely that's going to be for the CN client first, and we'll get that one later. They do also have some additional cosmetics here. Again, more than likely that's not going to be in the NA client, at least not just yet. Maybe the snow version one here, but I do believe a lot of these cosmetics will come later to global. I know a lot of people have been very excited for those, and I have heard that a lot of the new cosmetics that are coming along to our way, those are actually a lot more favored than the launch version ones. So if you wanted to hold out for those, you can do so. This one kind of does tie into that update here, but the CN client did have 2.2.5b version that went online. That did fix some bugs over there, and they also added an optimization for the red dot notification for the Friends channel. But that update looks like it hasn't currently come to global just yet. They also did just receive an optimization update over there. Some brand new filter and sort interface sections here, and even a brand new recycle interface and UI with even one-click recycling. They've also enabled some additional features for group chats, where you can now have up to 8 admins per room, and the admins there can modify different information. They can adjust connection methods. So again, looks like those features still haven't come to global, but they will eventually, of course. Also, just a quick mention here, I am doing a sworn cohort. I do have about 6 or 5 slots left, so if you wanted to join that, you can do so. You can earn some social stuff there and some additional cosmetics. Potentially might do a guild in the future. I've been asked to do one. If you guys would be interested in that, do let me know, and maybe I will start one. Overall, that's about covered for today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.